Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Earlier today, November 30th, 2020, MPP Jane McKenna's Private Members Bill, Bill 201, the Magna Carta Day Act, in memory of Julia Munro, MPP, received royal assent and became law in Ontario. With the passage of this bill, every year in Ontario on June 15th, we will honor and remember the Magna Carta as a document that changed the course of history. This evening, we've gathered together to celebrate the passage of this bill and to honor Ontario's longest-serving female member of provincial parliament, Julia Munro. We'll begin this evening with a video introduction of the Magna Carta.
Angered with King John's merciless laws, the barons had enough. United in their opposition to King John, and with the support of Stephen Langton, the Archbishop of Canterbury, they vowed they would not support King John's war in France unless restraints were made on the king's power at home. Under King John's reign, there was little regard for the rights of women. If a noblewoman became widowed, her hand in marriage could be sold to another of the king's choosing. Magna Carta enshrined the right of widowed noblewomen not to be forced into marriage. The barons resolved to put an end to King John's tyranny and protect their rights and property, and ensure that an accused man would not be imprisoned, stripped of his rights and possessions, or exiled unless by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. These ideals included in Magna Carta were important steps in the evolution of the rights and liberties adopted by many countries centuries after Magna Carta was sealed.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce the host of tonight's virtual celebration, the MPP for Burlington and the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Labour, Training and Skills Development, Jane McKenna.
I first of all just wanted to say it was an absolute honor and a privilege today to be standing with the Lieutenant Governor, and also just in that room was just so overwhelming with Minister Mulroney, and there was Andrea Kanjan was there, and it was just a wonderful opportunity for us. I want to say that, you know, I had the opportunity of being with MPP Munro from 2011 to 2014, and we had many wonderful stories. One that just stuck in my mind was I never asked her if she was a teacher, and somehow I knew that she was. She never imparted her thoughts on you. She was always so kind and thoughtful when she, you know, gave you information. And I smile every time I think of her because there were so many wonderful stories, and she was so helpful to me. We both had duty day on Thursdays, which was PMB days. And I'll say that about our Paul Callander, the government house leader, is on here. She would be over the moon that we've changed PMBs, because there was a handful of people there on Thursdays, and she loved PMBs and all the hard work that all the members have put forward to that. Obviously, I did mine on at 9 o'clock in the morning, and she would have found that, she would have been thrilled with that opportunity that people were listening and people were all present on that. So that was one thing. And then also we made another change to the standing orders that parliamentary assistants are able to speak in the House now. And she would have thought that was, you know, just over the top as well. So I want to thank our government House leader for that. But I just want to say a few things. You know, I brought this forward, obviously in memory of her, but also, you know, this is the foundation of our Charter of Rights and Freedom, and it's so important, and it was so important to her. I just want to say a few things. I know that was in the video we put together, but you know, June 15th now will be Magna Carta Day, but it's just about that nobody is above the law of the land, the freedom from unlawful detention without cause or evidence, trial by jury was established to settle disputes, and a major first step in women's rights, a widow could not be forced to marry and give up her property. I'll leave you with this, and then we're going to go on to the next part of the program, but I just want to leave you with a few words from our late colleague. The ideas contained with the Magna Carta evolved over the centuries. It signifies that no one, not even the crown, is above the law. That is such an important concept, unquote, from her. I appreciate everybody that's on this call tonight. This has been a wonderful journey for myself. And I'm thrilled that her husband, John, and Genevieve are on here tonight as well, and they're going to say a few words at the end. But thank you very, very much for coming on here tonight at 6 o'clock and paying tribute to not only the longest standing female MPP, but a kind, wonderful human being that I was blessed to have the opportunity to meet and be with in the House.
Unbeknownst to me, my husband's cousin was a member of the riding association, and he was on the same level of chairs, the row of chairs. So he kind of looked down the road like this and did a little bit of hands, I don't know it. So he stood up and said,
and nominated
me, and then poked his friend, and the friend stood up and seconded the nomination, and there I was.
Julia Ann Louise Campbell was born in Hamilton and raised in Toronto. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Toronto. She taught high school history in Markham and Newmarket for 24 years. An interesting bit of trivia, she taught Bare Naked Ladies drummer Tyler Stewart at Huron Heights Secondary School. Before the 1995 provincial election, Julia decided, in her words, that she was tired of sitting around the kitchen table complaining about politics and decided to get involved. She was elected to the Ontario Legislature in 1995 during the Mike Harris sweep, defeating New Democrat Larry O'Connor in the riding of Durham, York, getting a 61.8% of all votes cast. She was re-elected in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, and 2014.
Minister, will you do the right thing and eliminate the ongoing uncertainty, anxiety, and the fear of closure of the demonstration and provincial schools in Ontario? Yes or no?
I met with Stefan Marinoiu. Since Sunday, he has been on a hunger strike demanding that this government take action on autism. Stefan is out in front of this building because he has an autistic son, and he wants his son to receive the treatment he needs. Yesterday, to her credit, the Minister of Children and Youth came out and met with Stefan. Now it is up to her to talk to the Premier and the Minister of Finance and find the money to meet the needs of autistic children like Stefan's.
Don Chapman and Jim Chapman are the owners of Lakeview Vegetables. They are here today in the gallery to join us. They have made many efforts to reduce and conserve power. The nature of this vegetable processing work is both energy intensive and weather dependent. This year, their bill is set to exceed $1 million, up 67% since 2013. This hydro usage hasn't differed much, but the bill sure has.
As 2017 reflects the 100th anniversary in Ontario of women's right to vote, it also holds another milestone in our province for women in government. First elected in June 1995, Julia Munro, our respected colleague from York Simcoe, now stands as Ontario's longest-serving woman member of Parliament. Today, she has surpassed 7,944 days as a member of this legislature. So it is only fitting that the former and distinguished history teacher who left her mark on her students so many years ago now leaves her own mark in our parliamentary history books as the longest-serving woman MPP in Ontario. We honor and salute you. Congratulations. Well done.
Julia became well known in our community when she led the successful fight to stop Bob Rae's NDP proposal to locate North America's largest landfill site on the shores of Lake Simcoe. A history teacher, Julia went on to teach the NDP a lesson they would never forget and make some history of her own, as she went on to become the MPP for Durham York and join Mike Harris in painting Ontario blue. In the legislature, she has served in many roles, including as Deputy Speaker for the 40th Parliament. Having served the residents of York Simcoe for more than 21 years, she has a track record of fighting intrusive big government and working for individual freedom. Her electoral track record of success reflects the affection that York Simcoe residents have for Julia Munro. It's an honor to stand in the House of Commons today and pay tribute to the amazing work that Julia Munro has done for our community and for the province of Ontario in her work at Queen's Park. Congratulations, Julia.
We take a lot for granted, Speaker, with our parliamentary democracy that we inherited from the people who came before us and fought hard to preserve it. MPP Munro introduced the same Magna Carta bill 3 times. With my introduction, this bill has now been debated 5 times and considered by 4 different legislative committees. I am so grateful to everyone here for your support to pay the ultimate tribute to Julia Munro, passing a bill in her honor that meant so much to her. I leave you with a few words from our late colleague. The ideas contained within the Magna Carta evolve over the centuries. It signifies that no one, not even the Crown, is above the law. That is such an important concept. Thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you.
When it was referenced about sitting around the kitchen table, and people have asked me, and I've always said, that's the part of our democracy, is that's your responsibility to be engaged. And that's why sitting at the kitchen table won't cut it. But I also, and I know that there were a couple of references made by the press, but one that I liked particularly was a local editor of a local paper who interviewed me, and in his write-up, he described me as someone who had climbed out of the crib and crawled to the right. So I thought that was okay. I didn't mind that at all. On the frame of my license plate, it says, "Democracy, don't waste it."
Anyone who worked with Julia Munro during her 23 years in the Ontario Legislature has many fond memories of their time with her. Tonight, we'll hear from a few of her colleagues, her husband John and daughter Genevieve. I'll welcome back MPP Jane McKenna to introduce our first speaker.
I just want to actually, Minister Mulroney is going to speak next. I just want to say that when Minister Mulroney was opening up her constituency house, her constituency office, I stood there and I thought to myself, you know, it would be very difficult to pass the reins, but I knew that, you know, if she had to pick somebody for that position, that would have been Minister Mulroney. So Minister Mulroney, do you have a few words you'd like to say?
I'm so happy this day has finally come. Jane, thank you so much for those kind words. You know, a few months ago, I ran into John Munro at the CIBC in Keswick, and it was early on in the pandemic. We were wearing masks and we were socially distanced, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I said, "How are you?" And he said, I'm well. And we talked about Julia, and we talked about, you know, how he thought Julia should be honored. And he talked about this PMB, this bill about bringing back the Magna Carta Day Act because it was so important to her. And I said to him, you know, the legislature isn't actually sitting now, and he was so committed to making sure that this got done in her memory. So I left the bank. I went to Julia's old Constit office, which is now mine. And I called Paul Calandra, the government house leader, and said, is it even possible? And even with the abbreviated legislative schedule that we've had, Paul was determined to see this happen. And Jane came forward and brought this PMB forward in Julia's memory. And Jane, you brought it forward and through the legislature with such passion and dedication to Julia's memory that you really did. I think you showed us how to honor someone that we all respect and love and miss. And it was a beautiful tribute. And even this event, even with the technical issues today, that video is truly special. And I look forward to getting to watch it later when with the sound on. I just want to say a few words about Julia. When I rose in the House to speak to this bill, I spoke about what Julia taught me. And she taught me about the concept of core principles. And core principles are essential for politicians, but core principles are important for all of us. And it was clear that she always knew who she was, what she believed in, where she stood on every issue, because she knew what her core principles were. And it was how, I think it speaks to how she approached her work, her community, and her province. She was always so clear, and that clarity of thought and commitment, it really is rare today in this day and age. And what I love about this bill is that it provided us all with the opportunity to remind everyone of what Julia stood for and what those core principles are, and that we should all remember to stand by our own. So you all know Julia had her license plate that read, "It's your democracy, don't waste it." I thought it was fantastic. It was short and to the point, and it really perfectly summed up Julia's views on a citizen's role and responsibilities in our society. She respected our institutions and our parliamentary traditions in principle and in reality. And her long career as a dedicated elected official is testament to her devotion to our democracy and to our system of representation. It was an honor to have known Julia and to have learned so much from her. And I'm just so thrilled that this day came, because with this bill, Julia's legacy will live on in Ontario. So thank you again, Jane, for organizing this evening. And I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on Julia.
Minister Mulroney, thank you so much. It's been just an honor doing this with you as well, because you're just as much a part of this as I am. And I want to thank you very, very much. It's been a wonderful journey up to this point. MPP Munro, and see what she was speaking in the House, and it was always silence when she spoke, because, you know, she was always thoughtful. She was, you know, she never heckled anybody, and that's what made her a fabulous deputy speaker, because of how she was so thoughtful of everybody that was in the House. Minister Thompson, I want to say this about Minister Thompson, that she, you know, she fought with Speaker Levesque to be able to have the longest standing MPP, female MPP on our wall, and it was because of her that happened. So Minister Thompson, can you say a few words?
Thank you so much, Jane, and congratulations on such an amazing day. I well appreciate how you must have been feeling when you stood there with the Lieutenant Governor and she gave this really important bill royal assent. Congratulations to everyone involved. And I say everyone because we all got behind Jane when this was coming forward, because this was something, not only is the Magna Carta some things we need to respect, but it was more the fact that we were doing this for Julia. I believe it was at least 3 times. And John and Genevieve, it's so good to be with you this evening. And thank you for speaking to Caroline about having this opportunity to remember Julia. There's no better fitting tribute. So I want to share with you that I was honored to be able to support MPP McKenna in this, because she's right. I did go to Speaker Levesque and I did officially request that Julia be recognized in the Remarkable Assembly. The Remarkable Assembly is on the first floor in the east wing of Queen's Park, and it recognizes all the women who have made an impact and for many reasons have been first in what they have achieved at Queen's Park. We have a whole host of different independent officers. We have the first woman sergeant of arms. We have the first premier. And of course, we have our amazing people that we stand on their shoulders, Agnes MacPhail and Betty Stevenson and Elizabeth Whitmer. And it was only right. It was only right that Julia was able to join those ranks, because not only does she have that special designation of the longest standing serving woman MPP in the province of Ontario, but it represents so much more. Seeing her in the remarkable assembly reminds all of us of what she stood for and the person she was. And we all, in looking and sharing that view in the remarkable assembly, can aspire to be like her. Caroline, I appreciated your comments whereby you shared how John asked for, a fitting way to remember Julia, but you also hit the nail so squarely on the head when you described Julia's commitment to core principles and the manner and grace in which she worked to achieve those core principles every day. And, you tie that together with the Magna Carta, and it's just a perfect fit. I first met Julia at a PC Women in Politics event in about 2008. She was a panelist, and she hooked me because she had such a genuine way about her when it came to describing how we can make a difference. And ladies and gentlemen on the call tonight, we remember her for that, and we will never forget her. John and Genevieve, you must be so proud. And I'm smiling because Julia and I connected on so many other different levels as well. But one thing I did not realize until this past week when we were in third reading of this bill was the manner in which she reached out and she touched the hearts and the commitment to democracy of other women in the House. And in the next generation, we have Andrea Kanjan. Andrea, just her comments just struck me. And, in a day and age when we can be frustrated with the next generation, they don't care, they just don't get it. Well, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you're about to hear from a young lady, one of our newest colleagues around the PC table. And I knew her as a policy advisor, and I knew at that time when she was one of our policy advisors, she definitely got it. And now the riding of Barry Innisfil is so lucky to have her as their representative because she embodies everything that Julia cared about and worked so hard for. And so I'm going to pass the baton right now to Andrea Kanjan. She is just a force to be reckoned with. And again, she embodies so much of what Julia stood for. And I think that's the thread that ties us all together here tonight. Democracy matters. Following the rule of law matters, but recognizing no one is above it. And recognizing as well that the Magna Carta set down the cornerstones in which women achieved so many rights. And at this time, I am very, very honored to pass the torch over to Andrea Kanjan. Thank you so much for joining us this evening and celebrating Julia.
Thank you, Lisa, for that very humbling introduction, and it's hard to follow. Julia certainly left even though she was a petite lady, she did leave big shoes to fill. And I will always miss our chats, whether it was when I saw her at PC party events or when I got to spend a few years at Queen's Park and deliberate with her over and over again on policy. And she would always remind me that, we can never run out of ideas and that the ideas have to come from a fundamental part, which Minister Mulroney alluded to with our core values that are ingrained in our PC party constitution. And so when I feel a bit lost at days, I always reflect on our core party principles and remind myself as to what I represent and why I got elected, but more importantly, who inspired me and continued to lead me in the right direction in terms of things to not forget. And that was Lady Munro. She stuck by my side for many core events in my life. And she was with me when I was first seeking to be the PC party nomination candidate. It was a tough go at it, but she was there firmly, and I would frantically call her. And John and Genevieve, you might remember some of these frantic calls. There was a few, and one of them I remember was the Christmas parade, and I was, I was frantic. I was trying to do a lot of things, and she was so calm, and she said, "You know what? This is." She kind of put my soul to ease and kind of directed me as to the priorities, and again reconnecting with what the priorities should be at the time, and so that was very helpful. But it spoke to how she always cares for others, and even though she had other things going on in her life, she did always give me the time of day and always spend time chatting with me. And I will always miss those chats on her couch in her office. And many a times I would look at the clock and I realized, 3 hours had passed, and many people were asking, why do I work late hours? And I thought, well, I just spent 3 of them talking to like an incredible individual. And I cherish those times, and I do miss them greatly. And I remember some of the things that she did that, she wasn't one of those grandstanding politicians that needed to take credit on a soapbox all the time. For example, when Premier Harris asked her, and she told me this, when Harris asked her to come up with the breakfast program, that giving kids and that formidable meal at the beginning of the day so they can learn was so important for her. And it was a voluntary program, and that was something she was really, really proud about as a former teacher, but also the importance of personal responsibility and, of course, democracy. So, I mean, I could go on because there was so many core principles that she held on to, and she found the right way to do them in the most tasteful, respectful, very classic way. And I try to remember that. But I want to thank, if Dr. Carolyn Harris is on this Zoom, because it was through knowing Julia, and through her office, I came to know your book on the Magna Carta, which I think might be in John Munro's background. I'm not quite sure, but I'll have to zoom in later on that one. But I just wanted to end to thank MPP Jane McKenna for introducing this bill, this lovely legacy. And I'm very proud to be amongst women who are going to keep making change. When Julia was elected, she was 19 out of 130 female MPPs, and now we've got 49 female MPPs. So certainly Julia has left her mark, and it continues. And I want to thank John and Genevieve for sharing John, your wife with me, and Genevieve, your mom with me. And you didn't just share her with me, but you shared her with so many people on this call and in this province. So thank you very much. And I think I'm going to be passing the next torch to Paul. We're going back to Paul. So I get to serve with Paul as his deputy house leader, and learning a lot through Paul, and he's coming up next.
Hey, sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me now. Hopefully you can. I'm just going to talk, and if you can't hear me, then you're going to miss a great speech. Look, I'll just say this. I first met Julia when I was a staffer in 1995. And she was, she was obviously nice, but she never treated you like a staffer. She would always listen and pay attention to you. But I think the times I remember most, I spoke to her so often. Our offices were across from each other for a bit. But in 2008, when I ran for office, late at night, Julia Munro appeared with a scrutineer kit. I had no idea, and I was in total shock. There's Julia Munro. She was scrutineering for me. Again in 2011, late at night, who walks in through the door with a scrutineer kit all day at a school? Julia Munro. And then again in 2015, when it was very clear that it wasn't going to be a successful night for us, Julia Munro walks in 10:30 at night with a scrutineer kit, and I find out that she had been there all day at a high school scrutineering for me. And that's just the kind of person that she was. She was just awesome. And as much as I said that, I was saying earlier, I'm lucky enough to be the guy that just happens to be the House leader at the time. This was going to happen regardless, because every single member of caucus who served with her made it very clear to me that if I valued my job and my life, that this was going to pass. Caroline said to me after her call with after meeting John, she said, "You have 2 jobs, Paul, pass a budget and Magna Carta. That's it." And we did it. And then we went to Jane, and Jane said, "Don't worry, I've got it covered." And she knocked it out of the park. Honestly, she did such a great job of making sure this thing got passed. So thank you, John and Genevieve. You're just, she was just such a remarkable woman. We could go on all night with it, but honestly, I just happen to be the guy lucky enough to be sitting in the House Leader's chair when all of these great people who happen to work with her made it very clear it's passing and get it done as quickly as possible. And then Jane, thank you for knocking it out of the park and making sure it got done. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You meet lots of people in your life, and there's certain people that touch your heart and soul, and certain people that you learn from. There's so many people that could say things tonight about Julia Munro, but there's so many other things that we could be saying as well. So I hope John and Genevieve, you know, you obviously know what your mother and your wife were like, is, you know, all the things you learned from her as well. And John, every event she was at, you were always standing beside her, and it was amazing to watch the team that you were together. So John, I'm going to go to you next, John Munro, and you say a few words, and then we'll pass it over to your daughter.
I can go back to when Julia first started the political life, and she said, "Will you support me if I become an MPP?" And I said, "I will, as long as you treat everybody the same. There are no special people." And that's how we've lived. The property that I live on today and that Julia and I lived on has good air on it. The original owner from the Crown was Jacques Bobby, who was the first speaker of the Ontario Legislature, and his portrait hangs in Queen's Park. And we bought the property from Margaret Scrivener, who was up with the women on the first floor, and she was the first female cabinet minister in Ontario's history. So if anybody wants to go ahead in government, they need to buy this property from me because of the air. So I think that's what I have to say. I'm so proud of being Julia's husband.
So good to see you tonight, John.
This is so wonderful to see this tribute to my mom, but also it's, you know, wonderful to see that the bill that she worked so hard to bring forward is come to fruition. I'm so grateful to, well, I guess quite a few of you, Caroline for listening to my dad and helping bring this forward, and to Paul and Lisa and Andrea, but especially to Jane for making sure that this really did come to pass. It's wonderful, and it was very emotional watching you guys speak in the House the other day. I found myself going back to when my mother first spoke to the bill, because I was thinking, what am I going to say tonight? And so I thought, hey, let's, in her own words, because I was also thinking, well, I've been thinking so much lately with what's going on in the world, what my mother would have to say about it. And I wish I could talk to her about it. So the first thing that struck me when I went back to her original words on the second reading, she said, "The concept of equality before the law is a Canadian value. In a world overwhelmed by political instability, corruption, and war, the stability of Magna Carta shines brightly. As nations define human rights in their own jurisdictions, Magna Carta informs that process locally and at the international level." So I thought, all you have to do is insert the pandemic in there, and she pretty much covered it. But the other thing that I wanted to do, if you would indulge me, is again, go to my mother's words. And I stumbled across this a while ago when I was cleaning up my home office. And it was something that she wrote to me when I was in university. And I think it sort of addresses a lot of the topics that people covered this evening, particularly the idea of core principles. So she wrote to me, "Why is it that we must carry the burden of tedium on our backs, that we must dissipate our energies in the pursuit of trivialities, that we must avoid being drawn into meaningless confrontation, that we must be eternally vigilant to protect our spirits, that we must recognize what is truly ourselves, not what has been programmed for us, that we must cultivate our own taste, not relish the pre-digested, that we must continue to grow, that we must believe in ourselves, that we must remain optimistic, and that we must not be eaten by guilt, by envy, by acrimony." I know she'd be so humbled and so honored to see this bill passed, and I'm very grateful to all of you for getting that done. It's a lovely legacy to my mother, and I'm very happy to be participating in this call this evening.
Honestly, Your mother would be so proud. I've got 5 kids and I've got absolute goosebumps. You've done your mom so proud with what you said tonight, and that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so, so much. It's just brought this all home with how I feel today with what's happened today. I know Minister Scott is next.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. And yes, I need the Kleenex box. So touching. Obviously, John and Genevieve, you know, the love that we all felt for your mom and how we wanted to carry on her legacy. And Jane has been wonderful, and lots of support from everybody. You know, we all went down after Jane spoke in the legislature, and Lisa Thompson and Andrea and all the women that could went down to the remarkable assembly of the women in the gallery on the first floor, and got our pictures taken. It brought back that wonderful memory when we did the dedication with you and your mom and your dad, and I think your mom's sister was there too, and a lot of us, and how great that was. And we're so happy that that happened for her, and the many tributes that we actually had. I think that there was many parties that carried on to celebrate Julia being the longest sitting woman MPP in the legislature. And I know at the Albany Club, right after our election, and Carolyn was the guest speaker at the Albany Club, and I think I did the thank yous or the intros or some part of the Albany Club in celebrating her. What a marvelous night it was, and how great Julia looked. And I think back of, oh my heavens, she knew my dad. My dad was an MP in a similar area. John's family, of course, comes from the Brock Township part of the riding, and how, you know, she knew him and knew those stories and was a mentor to me. And all very much of the fairness of democracy, and always the teacher, always setting it up. She was available. She'd give you her time, suggestions when you wanted it on your time schedule. And I just learned so much from Julia, and was so honored to be able to sit with her and to learn from her. And I think she'd be thrilled where we are now. And I think, Genevieve, you hit it on the head. I have asked myself, I would say no less than 10 times, what would Julia say as we go through this pandemic? So thank you for those wonderful words, Genevieve. And John, what a dedicated husband you were. I know you'd always tease that you were a step back to the right when she was out there, but all the great services that we were at together and the fun times we had in politics. Politics can be fun. So thanks for the opportunity to just say a few words tonight. And I want you to know, forever grateful for the time that I got to spend with Julia.
It's overwhelming, to say the least. I watched Minister Thompson speak in the House in tears. I listened to Andrea talk about so eloquently about her life, and, you know, all the lessons learned from Julia. I mean, you know, Minister Scott has said so many things to me sitting in front of the House that I think to myself, my gosh, not that I bring this back to myself, but I can't imagine leaving a legacy that this woman has left. And this was an honor and a privilege to be able to have this opportunity to bring this forward. Your mom was so much about process and protocol, and Genevieve, she would be over the moon from what you said tonight, solidifies who she was as a person. And, you know, they always say an apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and that's clearly indicated with what you had to say tonight. John, thank you. I met you numerous times, and you were always so side by side with your beautiful bride. And, you listen intently to everybody at times when I'm sure there were lots of times where you could be at other places, but you were always so dedicated to her. And thank you so much for that. I thank you, Minister Thompson, for making sure that her beautiful legacy is hung at Queen's Park because of what you did with Speaker Levesque. So thank you very much for all that. I thank the Government House Leader, Paul Calandra, because she would have been honored to have seen all the changes that you've made in the House that make us so much better as a government and make her proud with all the processes and protocol. So we don't have anything to drink, but we'll raise a toast to Lady Munro, who made such a difference in all of our lives. Thank you for today. It was an honor. And
to Lady Munro.
Lady Munro.
Lady Munro.
Lady Munro.
To Lady Munro.
Thank you, everyone.
Lady Munro.
To Lady Munro.
Oh, love that picture of her.
in Georgina, there was a vacancy. So unbeknownst to me, my husband's cousin was a member of the riding association, and he was on the same level of chairs, the row of chairs. So he kind of looked down the road like this and did a bit of hands, I don't know it. So he stood up and said,
and nominated
me, and then poked his friend, and the friend stood up and seconded the nomination, and there I was.
Julia Ann Louise Campbell was born in Hamilton and raised in Toronto. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Toronto. She taught high school history in Markham and Newmarket for 24 years. An interesting bit of trivia, she taught Bare Naked Ladies drummer Tyler Stewart at Huron Heights Secondary School. Before the 1995 provincial election, Julia decided, in her words, that she was tired of sitting around the kitchen table complaining about politics and decided to get involved. She was elected to the Ontario Legislature in 1995 during the Mike Harris sweep, defeating New Democrat Larry O'Connor in the riding of Durham York, getting a 61.8% of all votes cast. She was re-elected in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, and 2014.
Minister, will you do the right thing and eliminate the ongoing uncertainty, anxiety, and the fear of closure of the demonstration and provincial schools in Ontario? Yes or no?
I met with Stefan Marinoyu. Since Sunday, he has been on a hunger strike demanding that this government take action on autism. Stefan is out in front of this building because he has an autistic son, and he wants his son to receive the treatment he needs. Yesterday, to her credit, the Minister of Children and Youth came out and met with Stefan. Now it is up to her to talk to the Premier and the Minister of Finance and find the money to meet the needs of autistic children like Stefan's.
Don Chapman and Jim Chapman are the owners of Lakeview Vegetables. They are here today in the gallery to join us. They have made many efforts to reduce and conserve power. The nature of this vegetable processing work is both energy intensive and weather dependent. This year, their bill is set to exceed $1 million, up 67% since 2013. This hydro usage hasn't differed much, but the bill sure has.
As 2017 reflects the 100th anniversary in Ontario of women's right to vote, it also holds another milestone in our province for women in government. First elected in June 1995, Julia Munro, our respected colleague from York Simcoe, now stands as Ontario's longest-serving woman member of Parliament. Today, she has surpassed 7,944 days as a member of this legislature. So it is only fitting that the former and distinguished history teacher who left her mark on her students so many years ago now leaves her own mark in our parliamentary history books as the longest-serving woman MPP in Ontario. We honor and salute you. Congratulations. Well done.
Julia became well known in our community when she led the successful fight to stop Bob Rae's NDP proposal to locate North America's largest landfill site on the shores of Lake Simcoe. A history teacher, Julia went on to teach the NDP a lesson they would never forget and make some history of her own, as she went on to become the MPP for Durham York and join Mike Harris in painting Ontario blue. In the legislature, she has served in many roles, including as Deputy Speaker for the 40th Parliament. Having served the residents of York Simcoe for more than 21 years, she has a track record of fighting intrusive big government and working for individual freedom. Her electoral track record of success reflects the affection that York Simcoe residents have for Julia Munro. It's an honor to stand in the House of Commons today and pay tribute to the amazing work that Julia Munro has done for our community and for the province of Ontario in her work at Queen's Park. Congratulations, Julia.
We take a lot for granted, Speaker, with our parliamentary democracy that we inherited from the people who came before us and fought hard to preserve it. MPP Munro introduced the same Magna Carta bill 3 times. With my introduction, this bill has now been debated 5 times and considered by 4 different legislative committees. I am so grateful to everyone here for your support to pay the ultimate tribute to Julia Munro, passing a bill in her honor that meant so much to her. I leave you with a few words from our late colleague. The ideas contained within the Magna Carta evolve over the centuries. It signifies that no one, not even the Crown, is above the law. That is such an important concept. Thank you so much, Speaker.
Thank you.
When it was referenced about sitting around the kitchen table, and people have asked me, and I've always said, that's the part of our democracy, is that's your responsibility to be engaged. And that's why sitting at the kitchen table won't cut it. But I also, and I know that there were a couple of references made by the press, but one that I liked particularly was the local editor of the local paper who interviewed me, and in his write-up, he described me as someone who had climbed out of the crib and crawled to the right. So I thought that was okay. I didn't mind that at all. On the frame of my license plate, it says, "Democracy, don't waste it."